Tools and Techniques. So, a 6-step process with 8 foundational skills, how many tools and techniques do you think are involved? Meadows and Parikh include almost 30. We can't cover them all in this blink, but let's go over a few of them. Have you heard of the 5 whys? This technique is especially useful in figuring out if the right problem is being looked at. This is a crucial issue when solving any challenge. If you're not looking at the right challenge in the first place, there's no way you'll be able to solve it. So how do the 5 whys work? This technique has a physical aspect, so before you start, gather some Post-its and something to write with and bring your team together in one place. First, agree on a problem statement. Perhaps the statement is something like, an associate injured his thumb. Write this problem statement on a sticky note and stick it to your working surface, a wall or whiteboard. Then, draw an arrow downward beneath the note and ask yourselves why the problem exists. Write all the answers your team thinks of on Post-its and put them under the arrow and original Post-it. Decide on the answer that seems most correct. This is the level 2 problem. In our example, perhaps the associate injured his thumb because it got caught in a conveyor belt. Repeat the process. Add an arrow beneath the level 2 problem note, come up with possible answers for why it happened, and decide on the most correct one. Continue until you find what seems to be the root cause. Most often, it will emerge after 5 or so rounds of whys. But if it emerges before or after that, no worries. You can take this process as far as it needs to go to find the root cause. So, in our example, we have an associate who injured his thumb. Why was his thumb hurt? Well, because it got caught in a conveyor belt. Why did it get caught? Because he tried to grab his bag from the moving belt. Why was he trying to grab his bag from a moving belt? Because he'd set his bag on the belt and it surprised him by turning on. Why did he set the bag on the belt? Well, because he was using it as a table. And there we have the root of the problem. The associate needed a table surface near the conveyor belt. Does this example seem a little random? It's actually a real-world example of the 5 whys at work. The incident happened at an Amazon fulfillment center in 2004. Jeff Bezos, founder and CEO of the company, used the 5 whys to drill down to the root cause of the problem and find the simple solution, adding a table near the conveyor, to avoid any future safety incidents of the same kind. Another DT technique is HMW. How might we? This is a technique for generating ideas, similar to brainstorming, but focused on answering questions that begin with, how might we? For example, how might we make brushing your teeth fun for teenagers? Using the HMW sentence stem elicits a state of wondering, of ideation, which can help generate the breadth of ideas needed for successful brainstorming. A third technique useful in DT is the scamper technique. This acronym prompts teams to think of whether there's anything in existing products or solutions that can be substituted, combined, modified, magnified, minimized, put to another use, eliminated, or reversed or rearranged. It's another tool helpful in finding creative solutions. Thanks for listening to our blink to The Design Thinking Workbook by C.J. Meadows and Charvi Parikh. Now, you might ask, but wait, what about the slow elevators? Was it a technical or a human-based problem? And how did the manager solve the issue? When looking into the problem, the manager began by observing people using the elevators. He found that people hated waiting in the lobby for the elevators to arrive. They had no problem with how fast the elevators moved once they'd boarded them. So the real issue was riders' irritation while waiting in the lobby. As a prototype of a solution, the manager hung several cheap, full-length mirrors next to the elevator doors in the lobby. The result? People were so satisfied doing last-minute checks on their clothes, hair, and faces that they no longer cared about the time they'd spent waiting. So, the slow elevators problem turned out to be a human-centered problem after all. Nothing to do with the mechanics of the machinery. And the manager solved the issue with some creative design thinking techniques. A satisfying end, don't you think? Clearly, we couldn't cover everything Meadows and Parikh share in their workbook, but you've learned the 6 steps of their DT methodology: challenge, observe, understand, envision, solve, and prototype. You know the 3 aspects of empathy: cognitive, emotional, and active. And you've learned or been reminded of the difference between hearing and listening, passive versus intentional. In the last section, you learned about the 5 whys, HMWs, and Scamper. All of these will be helpful as you begin using the design thinking approach to solving problems. And if you want to learn more skills, tools, and techniques, you know where to find them. Hey,